Hi everyone, it's Guillaume from Startup Basecamp. Welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. During the show, you will have the opportunity to meet the best climate tech founders, investors, and experts from both Silicon Valley and around the globe. They will share with you their stories and personal journeys into this growing and exciting industry, giving you some insight into the ecosystems that help you to take part in the fight against climate change and benefit from the opportunities it can represent. The podcast is divided in two small interviews. So in the first part, you will get to know our speakers, their perspectives on the climate crisis and how climate tech is changing the game. The second part of the discussion will be for members of our community who will learn the speakers' secret sauce on how to and share with you their unique expertise on topics such as fundraising, management, strategy, and so on, to help you to become a better leader in your field. So before we start, I would like to quickly share what we are doing at Startup Basecamp to support climate tech founders in accessing resources and gaining visibility with investors they seek. Our initiatives include a membership-based community platform offering access to a dedicated Slack group with a growing number of founders, experts, and investors from around the world, and a series of exclusive content such as interviews, weekly job listings, events, and our quarterly online pitch of night opportunity. But more than a place where you can learn, exchange, and grow, we are building a matchmaking service to facilitate connections between our members and top investors and experts in the field. And soon, alongside with other top investors, we will be launching a small fund to co-invest in the growth and acceleration of our members. Finally, all of this is possible because of your support and donations. We are a small self-funded team, and we want you to be part of this collective movement against climate change. So please share one episode with a friend and subscribe to the channels. As an added bonus, we will plant a tree for each of our subscribers each time we reach 1,000 new fans or donors. Do not hesitate to connect with me via social media or email guillaume@startupbasecamp. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope to get in touch with you soon. And now, let's go for the show. Hi everyone, in today's episode we are speaking with Wes Selke, founder partner at Better Ventures. Better Ventures is an Oakland-based early-stage venture firm that backs mission-driven founders that are leveraging emerging technologies and breakthrough science to solve big problems in the world, from climate to health to economic opportunity. It was a pleasure to talk with Wes, who has been investing in mission-driven startups for over a decade. Over the course of his career, he has gained particular insight into synbio and how it will play a crucial role in decarbonizing our industries. He gives us a deep dive into how economic growth is compatible with sustainability and reducing global emissions, and what role synbio can play. The second part of the show, Wes clues us into that framework he uses to assess the je ne sais quoi of the founders and investing. He also provides his tips on what he does to really keep a clear mind and a work-life balance. Wes, welcome to the show. Hi Wes, welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. I'm super happy to have you here with us today. I'm looking forward to this great opportunity to hear your story and get up to speed on what you guys are doing now and looking at with Better Ventures. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Guillaume. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. So that's the tradition now, as I always said. Before we start, can you please give us a 30-second intro about Better Venture?
Sure thing. We are an Oakland, California-based early-stage venture firm. We've been around since 2011, so about 11 years now. And we back mission-driven founders that are leveraging emerging technologies and breakthrough science to solve big problems in the world, from climate to health to economic opportunity.
So I'll start from the top. Can you tell us a bit more about your personal story and background? You know, in the show, we like to put the speaker back in the center of the interview as a human. So what do what are you passionate about? Like, what do you do besides supporting and investing in founders?
Yep.
What makes your best self? As I always said, like, who is Wes?
Sure. Great question. Well, from a sort of business and mission standpoint, it's really, this idea of, how do we leverage business and capitalism and technology and entrepreneurship to solve big problems in the world. And, that's something that I've been thinking about for a very long time, going all the way back to my career in traditional finance, back in the early 2000s. Really, traveling and visiting emerging markets and seeing how other people live and the big challenges that we face as a society, like just really got me thinking from a pretty early stage of my career, back when I had the flexibility to kind of make some changes to go on a quest that ultimately led to business school at Haas, moving out to the Bay Area, jumping into the venture business, and then ultimately starting my own firm at Better Ventures.
But you didn't tell me what are you passionate besides that.
Besides work, there's we could go on and on, but I'm passionate about a number of things. I love to cycle. Road biking is where I find my happy place. I also have a wonderful family. I've been married for 16 years. I've got 3 kids, Nora, Luke, and Etta, who range in age from 4 years old to 12 years old. And it's a lot of work, but also a lot of fun. I'm a Christian. I'm a believer, and I spend a lot of time, both going to church, but also, work. I'm involved with leadership at our church, and that's also been a big part of my motivation, my spirituality into wanting to make a difference in the world.
So, tell us now about your different experience that you gained during those 11 years of Better Venture, which is quite long for some fund. And I mean, you have Fund 3 today with an increasing focus on climate. I mean, can just maybe, as I was mentioning prior to the interview, this evolution that you probably saw from this clean tech, 1.0 to now climate tech. I mean, along the years, probably it helped you to redefine your thesis as well. I mean, what did you learn during that journey that, in a way, gave you an edge to be one of the leading firms today in the sector?
Sure. We've learned a lot over the last 11 years. And in fact, we just launched our 4th fund now. And, when we started, we were a measly little accelerator program. Rick Moss is my co-founder. He and I met in 2009, started working together in early 2011, launched an accelerator program. That was sort of the genesis of Better Ventures. Then we launched our first seed fund in 2014. We've learned a lot about how to do this business. There's a lot of learning, and there's a lot of ways to be successful in venture, and we've really been able to both develop and identify, what we're really good at, like what's our secret sauce, what are our strong points that we can really leverage to be successful. And a lot of that has to do with just, what stage you're investing, what kinds of things you're looking for on those early teams, and how to build your portfolio, portfolio construction in terms of the number of investments you make, the size checks that you write, the stakes that you're taking in those companies. How do you position your fund for, really good outsized returns? Learned a lot about that. But on the sort of evolution of the types of businesses that we invest in, from day one, we've always been investors in software. And I'd say where that has evolved to over time is also looking at emerging technologies and breakthrough science, because we're in just an unprecedented time right now where we've discovered some of the secrets of life and biology, and we can code life, and we can code organisms and create them in a way that bends to our will and makes the things that we want them to make. And we've got AI and ML and robotics and automation and material science breakthroughs. And so we're in an unprecedented time of innovation right now. And despite sort of the backdrop right now of difficult economic times, there's a long tail of innovation, of this transition in climate. It's an $11 trillion investment opportunity. So there's just a lot of exciting things out there. And I think where we've developed a muscle around is kicking the tires on these early emerging technology startups and making bets on the ones that we think can really make a difference in terms of generating great returns, but also creating impact at scale.
And in terms of investment, when you look at them, like, I mean, back in the early 2011, 2012, and now 2022, almost 2023, times is flying of the year. But do you see that this difference in between this clean and climate tech, like the type of and the ambition of the project that you see? Do you see like what is this evolution that you have seen?
Absolutely. I mean, there was sort of the green tech 1.0 back in, it was kind of starting in 2005 to 8. That was even led by some bigger name investment firms like Kleiner Perkins. That was ended up not being great. I mean, there were some big wins that came out of that, but there was a lot of investments primarily in capital-intensive markets, commodity, products that kind of rose and fell based on the price of oil. Biofuels, for example. That there was kind of a boom and a bust there, and from the ashes of that, came, some newer technologies. Out of the ashes of the biofuels revolution came like, well, how can we, code organisms to make other things? Like, well, maybe biofuels isn't the best thing to make. It's a commodity. Its fortunes are tied to the price of oil. What if we made higher value molecules that could be used in industry to replace synthetic chemicals, petro-based chemicals? How do we use it in the food industry, for example? We're in an era now where climate tech is very much en vogue. We've been doing this since 2011, when it wasn't a very popular or well-known category for investments. And now there's just been a rush of capital over the last 3-4 years. A lot of interest in ESG, a lot of firms getting into the mix to back these kinds of opportunities. And so we're at a time right now where there's good critical mass of capital, but also of human resources, human capital. PhDs coming out of academia that are not interested in staying in academia. They want to jump into either their own startup or someone else's startup and really make a difference. So this move of sort of mission-driven talent, along with the capital, is creating really exciting opportunities.
So I'd like to step back quickly before zooming into more the macro view of the ecosystem, and something that we ask often is like, what was the driver that you had in a way to jump into the climate tech ecosystem as an investor? But I think with you guys it's slightly different, because I feel that there's like this VC industry that you jump into after your study and starting the accelerator with this like strong do good and positive impact. I would say like mojo that it sounds like Better Venture is animated, because not only about like climate and clean, but it's also health, it's also inclusion and diversity. So any specific like reason or aha moment that really pushed you to say, okay, let's not go just after software and like this huge hype that we can and those potential 100x return we could do, but we want to go more into this impact side without being like labeled as a non-profit impact fund.
From day one, we were motivated. Rick and I were motivated by the impact. We were not going to just start another venture firm focused on technology startups. We wanted to focus on technology startups that were looking to move the needle from an impact standpoint. Like, that's what got Rick and I out of bed in the morning. It's what still gets us out of bed in the morning, and it's what we care deeply about. So make money, do good has always been our mantra. And I would say in the early days, we got a lot of pushback from people about our thesis. Like, well, how are you gonna do both of those? Like, don't you have to take a concession if you're gonna create impact? And we kind of switched that on its head and said, we actually think you can make more money by backing mission-driven founders, because you've got founders that are intrinsically motivated to succeed. They're problem insiders. They've been thinking about solving this problem for a very long time. They have a deep desire to solve this problem. They can attract great talent, because talent wants to, it's kind of what we call this magnetic force of purpose that brings in talent. And then you've got these problems, whether it's climate or health or economic opportunity or education, that are massive market opportunities. And so we set out to show the world that you can make money and do good. And so far our track record of top tier results is very much indicating that you can do both of those things.
But do you have any specific moment, maybe a specific how's it called, aha moment that you could define or recall as such that was really the time where you say, okay, we should go and do that thesis? I mean, some people have they were in nature, some people met other people or got inspired.
Yeah.
What was yours?
Our aha was in 2010, the Impact Hub in San Francisco opened, and my prior firm that I worked for called Good Capital had very much a hand in helping that open. This is before WeWork existed. This was a co-working space that was part of a global network of co-working spaces that actually started in London, and it was specifically for mission-driven founders. And it had a real sense of community because you knew when you walked into the space, you were with like-minded people. So our offices at Good Capital moved from the Mission District of San Francisco to the Impact Hub in Soma at 5th and Mission in San Francisco. And as soon as it opened, it filled up almost, within a couple of months. It was full, and it was full of early stage companies. And I was, one of the few or only VCs in the space. And people were just sort of lining up to talk to me. This is, when I was kind of wearing my Good Capital hat, and people were wanting to talk. To see if Good Capital might invest, just to get my feedback or mentorship. And I had met Rick, and his background was in technology and software, and we just kind of had this light bulb go off. We're like, wow, this is a thing. And arguably that was ground zero for mission-driven technology, because we're in San Francisco, we're in the Bay Area, but we're also at the Impact Hub, and there was this real visceral need for capital and for support and mentorship for these really early stage companies that Good Capital was not in a position to provide. So that's when we kind of came up with this idea for an accelerator program. This is kind of when Techstars was starting to take off. YC had been around for a few years. And so we said, hey, why don't we create an accelerator program that would be like Techstars or Y Combinator, but focused on mission-driven technology companies. And that was sort of the sort of genesis and impetus for starting.
So let's take a zoom out and a step back now. I'd like to discover with you a little bit more this synbio landscape and its potential to contribute to the fight against climate change. I mean, maybe we can start by giving us to the audience a definition of synthetic biology, because it's something that can be unknown for many, and give us some data points regarding the scale of the market, where we are today, and the potential in terms of impact as well.
Sure. It really it really kind of goes back to breakthrough, scientific breakthroughs, and really if you chart it back, sort of next generation, inexpensive genome sequencing is a big part of it. Used to cost. I think the first mapping of human DNA cost like $1 billion, and now you can do it for well under $100, maybe more like $20. With technologies developed by companies like Illumina and 23andMe, that plus CRISPR gene editing. So now we have sort of a library of DNA at our fingertips because of low-cost genome sequencing, and then we have the ability to put that DNA into other organisms thanks to CRISPR gene editing. And those two forces combined with AI, ML, just like really robust computational power, is opening up a world of possibilities. Well beyond biofuels. That was sort of version 1.0 of what could be done with organisms, and really using organisms as a production chassis for making lots of different products, from clean chemicals to food ingredients like the heme that goes into the Impossible Burger, to even products now like companies like Bolt Threads and other biosynthetic, textile companies that are out there. And so, we're really just at the front end of discovering what's possible. McKinsey put out a report, I think it was in 2020, that pegged the sort of market potential at about $4 trillion for synthetic biology. That's a huge number. And it dovetails really well with this need to decarbonize industry, from food and ag to textiles to transportation to many other industries that are just producing so much of our greenhouse gas emissions. And so we have this tremendous opportunity to really leverage nature, really look to nature to create things in a much more sustainable way that's not going to generate all the carbon emissions and won't be a petroleum-based economy the way we have it now.
So would you have maybe for the audience a few existing solution or innovation that you're very excited about, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the potential and weaknesses, because often from the lab to full scale commercialization there is always a big challenge there, and maybe tell us why those 2 or 3 examples you feel that
Sure.
they are the ones that are the most with max growth potential, I would say, and impact.
Sure. Yeah. 2 quick examples come to mind. One in the food industry called Meaty, and another one in the chemicals industry called Debut, both portfolio companies of ours. So Meaty is an alternative protein company. They're based in Boulder, and they're growing mycelium, which is the roots of mushrooms, in these big vertical bioreactors that they've built in their production facilities in Boulder. And they're really tapping into the sort of growth and scale up of mycelium as a way to create an alternative protein and all, essentially plant-based, although mushrooms is somewhere between plant and human based meats, and they've come up with a way to develop a really nice texture that's very meat-like, and they can make a chicken breast now, and they can make a steak product. They're working on a number of other products as well, and they are coming up with very attractive products that are good alternatives to alternatives to meat products, but also alternatives to some of the kind of current market leaders for plant-based meat products, including Beyond and Impossible, which are now I think they're under the microscope for their nutritional profiles that are not that exciting, not that robust, and Meaty is one that is much more nutritional. The second one is a company called Debut Bio. They're based down in San Diego, and they've taken cell fermentation to the next level with a very innovative approach called cell-free biology, where they can use fermentation and biology to make things, but without actually having to grow the cells. So they reach inside the cells, they pull out the enzymes from the cells, they immobilize the enzymes, put them in cartridges, and then they can run the substrate, essentially the sucralose, the sugar water, through these cartridges, and make lots of different types of molecules that are high value add molecules like anthocyanins and cannabinoids and many other types of molecules that have uses in food and uses in personal care products. And so they've got a really unique, interesting way, novel way to develop these chemicals. So the pro, in the case of a Debut, is they can do it in a very sustainable way. They can do it in a very scalable way. But as you point out, they're having to build out facilities. There's they run the techno-economic analysis on whether or not they can produce at scale at a low cost, and there's still work to be done on the scale up front. And that's where, because these things are new, Meaty and Debut are both kind of new ways of producing things. There's not yet a real standard out there that shows the path to profitable scaling. And so they have to kind of prove that out as they go.
Yeah, and today I was like, watching this small documentary, and they was speaking about like the amount of and the numbers of like bioreactors that would be needed to even replace like 1% of the meat industry as of today. It sounds that there is like sometimes a little bit of like this discrepancy between like the product that we have and how do we bring it to market at a scale that makes sense as well to replace this existing like food supply that we have. Do you see that is like something that when you look at those type of investment, it's something that founders are doing a good job to find ways to go to that next step, or do you see that a lot of those companies will be needed together to replace and slowly like decrease the volume of like regular like co-meat or meat from animals that we could find on the market?
Yeah, we need infrastructure. We've got some infrastructure there, but we need a lot more infrastructure, and we also think that that's an appealing area for investment. In fact, we made an investment in Fund 3 in a company called POW Bio that's building out fermentation production infrastructure with a focus on intelligent fermentation and really tapping into the sort of data analytics behind fermentation, providing that back to customers so they can really fine tune and tweak their approaches. And so I think, I kind of view that as kind of like what they call like a picks and shovels approach to investing, where you're actually not making a vertical bet on any one company or molecule or product, but you're betting on more of a platform play that is going to benefit from the increase and sort of rise in the general synthetic biology industry. And so there's been a lot of talk about that. The capital costs of building these plants is still extremely high, and it's gotten more challenging since COVID, just with supply chain disruptions and getting the equipment that you need on time and at the right cost. And so we're on the lookout for continued innovations on that front. Like, there's bag bioreactors now, and there's different ways of producing different approaches from a capital and infrastructure standpoint to ultraviolet light fermentation. There's a lot of different or not fermentation, but to the how they keep things sanitary, for example. So there's a lot of kind of everything's on the table for how do we figure this out? How do we build out the infrastructure so we have the ability to scale up?
And I guess it's not only like venture capital money that would need to be poured into the game, but also project finance, debt financing, and
absolutely
support from the government to help support that scale. On the other side, I mean, which categories do you still see as a virgin area where there's a little happening, but where you see potentially like enormous potential, and that's still unscratched or like untouched right now in the synbio sectors that could have an application in the real world?
That's a good question. I mean, we're always out there looking for the next big thing. I think that in the food space, I continue to see new and interesting and sort of novel approaches to you've got fermentation of novel ingredients and plant-based foods over here, and you've got cellular agriculture over here that takes a very long time, is very expensive, needs regulatory approval. And now I'm starting to see entrepreneurs combine those two together, like using mycelium scaffolding for maybe 90% of the end product, plus some cell growth over the mycelium. So I think that these next few years, I think will be really interesting to see where people go next, where the entrepreneurs go next. And like that's really where we take our cues from, like where do we see the entrepreneurs going? What do we think is really interesting? What do we think is really novel in terms of how these different breakthrough technologies are being leveraged and combined to make things. And I do think these hybrid approaches are really interesting. Mission Barns is another investment of ours where they are making cellular agriculture grown pork fat, and they're combining it with plant-based protein. And you compare that to Upside Foods and some of these other companies that are 100% cellular ag. It's still going to take quite a while to get to cost parity with real meat. Whereas a company like Mission Barns, maybe 10% of the product has their fat in it, and the rest is plant-based protein. But yet the fat dramatically changes the taste profile and makes it taste much more closely to the real thing. And so this hybrid approach is a really interesting way to go about it and actually get down, scale down the cost curve.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been interviewing quite a bit of investors investing in the food tech, and some of them were using this analogy, saying as of today it's more like we're like at the iPhone 1 of the game. So things are getting to shape, but there's so much progress and acceleration in the space that's happening right now. So one question is more like on the ethical point of view. I would say playing with living organisms can always sound like a bit frightening for some people who do not understand the ins and outs and the science behind it. Even though a lot of stuff has been done for centuries in a way, but there's always this image of the Dr. Frankenstein, and in a way a red line to not cross. I mean, where do you see the risks and the limits of what is happening right now in terms of synbio, in terms of any red line that we should not cross that could hurt more than benefit our society?
Yeah, I'm optimistic when it comes to customer acceptance of these different products. I mean, I think for years there's been pushback against the idea of Franken meat or lab grown meat. And I just, I don't necessarily, I mean, these companies are still going to take a little while to get out there. And I think you'll have some early pioneers like Just Foods launched a chicken nugget in Singapore. Mission Barns will hopefully have their product out. It's going to be a meatball and a sausage and eventually bacon, launching next year. So you have some early pioneers who can kind of test the waters. I think the fact that we've got Beyond and Impossible and a lot of other plant-based foods out there that are mostly doing well and creating a new category. I think it goes to show the openness of consumers, and generally it's these younger generations anyway that are going to really drive the trends. So like Gen Z and Gen Z and millennial consumers that are on the cutting edge of things like veganism or just wanting to eat in a way that's more climate friendly. So I'm generally optimistic that so long as the products taste good and they're at the right price point and they're convenient, then people are gonna and they're healthy. Yeah, because I think that's the challenge right now with Beyond and Impossible. I think if all those things happen, then those companies and those products have a really good chance of getting adoption. I think there's other red lines. I think especially when it comes to designer babies and messing around with human DNA in utero or I guess pre conception, to sort of create the humans that we want to create. I mean, that's not an area we don't do a lot in that area, and kind of that end of life sciences, but it is what you are kind of playing with fire when you've got this sort of power of nature in your hands, and there's always going to be risks of using that to the detriment of society. And so I think it's important that we have these very challenging conversations that people like Jennifer Doudna, essentially the inventor of CRISPR, are having. So the ethics of synthetic biology, I think, are really important conversations to continue to have.
Who's in charge to, is it the, I mean, I guess on the food sector is more like the FDA in charge of looking at it, and
Yep.
Who is this organism in a way, taking the decision in terms of like even about the content. I mean, you mentioned like the protein source and like the nutritive value that you can get out of that food. Who is like checking that? Because I guess we try to all push fast innovation on the market, but sometimes it needs time to assess the longer term risk that could have those new product and innovation on the consumer itself.
Yeah, I mean, in the U.S., it's the FDA and the USDA are focused on that, and each of them, depending on what kind of product it is, you kind of go one path or the other. There's also GRAS approval, generally recognized as safe, as long as you're using ingredients that are already recognized as safe. You're just putting them together in a different way. You can get self-GRAS approval. And yeah, at the end of the day, these are not new molecules. They're not new proteins. They're not new. Even the cellular ag. I mean, it's still meat. It's still fat. From animals, but it's just not grown on the frame of an animal. It's grown in a bioreactor, inside of a production facility or a lab. And so while that, can really challenge the way we perceive these things, at the end of the day, we're still eating the same things. They're just made in a different way. I mean, same with fermentation. I mean, it's molecules and products that are pure in form and the same as ones that we've been consuming before, but they're just made in a different way. They're made via a different production chassis. And so, I think the more that knowledge can get out there, I think the more likely these different products are to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us, according to you, what are the U.S. advantages and weaknesses in regards to the decarbonization of the economy or the industry in itself? And maybe you can, tell us a bit more about like your opinion and like as an investor in terms of the Biden plan. I mean, is that more like a curtain of smoke where we're pouring money on the wrong direction? I mean, do you see any major roadblocks today in terms of this decarbonization? Have you identified maybe any like constraint? Do we lack some policies maybe or funding? Tell us a bit more about your vision regarding this situation as of today and where we need to be in a way in 2050.
Ultimately, the private market is going to need to solve these problems. The government is not going to solve these problems. I think having some kind of greasing of the wheels by the government, some incentive structures. I mean, I think the EV, support arguably has helped. Although there's some debate about whether or not that's just subsidizing purchases by well-off consumers, but so generally speaking, we're of course excited and positive about the Inflation Reduction Act and the additional tailwinds it's going to provide to this clean energy transition. But it's a few $100 billion, and what we really need is something on the order of $11 trillion of investment between now and 2050 over the next 28 years if we're going to really reach the lower levels of carbon emissions that we need to stay under the 2 degrees Celsius cap that was established in the Paris Accords. And so that's a massive mobilization of private capital. And there's going to be fits and starts. There's going to be failures and successes. But as a venture capitalist, it really excites me. You think about what all the investments that took place, kind of through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, just to kind of set the infrastructure for, both first the PC revolution, but then really the internet and the backbone and all the technologies, the hardware and software technologies that were required to establish the internet as a significant piece of infrastructure in our society. I think we're in a similar place with this clean energy transition, and $11 trillion represents a massive investment opportunity. So we're bullish. We're excited. We Climate is probably, climate technologies will probably be about 40% of our investments. They were in Fund 3 and probably will be in Fund 4 as well. And we are trying to look for some of the more software computational services around that. We're not a fund that would be able to invest in really intense, capital intensive projects and like nuclear fusion, for example. But it's a pretty exciting time, and I think we've learned a lot from this the first sort of excitement that happened back in 2006 to 2008 about where to invest and where not to invest, but we're in the midst of a pretty big transition, a very significant transition and mobilization of private capital that, as a venture capitalist, makes me pretty excited.
So last question on my side on the macro view. I mean, again, you mentioned this goal of 1.5 overall temperature increase by 2050. You mentioned a lot of innovation in terms of technology, but we also have this nature-based solution that we hear that we should be pushing for. I mean, what is this proportion that you think should be there? Should we push more one or the other, or one can support the other one? What's your opinion in terms of this tech solution that won't save us for some? People are saying no, it's only native-based solution, and I believe it's probably both. But what about you?
Hard to put a number on it, but I think we're in a place. The climate crisis has gotten to a level that it's so acute. Just witnessing Hurricane Ian, last week in Florida, and it's just natural disaster after natural disaster. The flooding in Pakistan. It's so acute that we need sort of all hands on deck, right? We need people working on this. We need capital coming in. We need a bunch of different technologies. I'm excited that nuclear fusion is getting investment again, we're at a place where we need a lot of different applications of different approaches, and food and ag represent 20 to 25% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and there are a lot of exciting natural solutions. Tapping into ag biologics as a replacement for synthetic fertilizer and pesticides and insecticides. Looking at soil as a way to sequester carbon. That's this whole regenerative agricultural movement, where everyone, we always think about trees as sequestering carbon, but soil, if we actually farmed the way we're supposed to farm to increase the health of our soil becomes a natural sink of carbon. And we're looking at companies that are tapping into that. And then we've got, on the agricultural genomics side, how do we grow crops that are more resilient to climate change, that can grow in more arid conditions with less water, hotter temperatures, different latitudes and longitudes, and how do we really bring to bear those different technologies? So I think we're at kind of a all hands on deck moment right now, because the crisis is so big and so acute that we've got to tap into all the different innovative technologies that we have to solve this problem, to ultimately, decarbonize, each and every industry that we rely on for our modern day economy.
So let's go into the specifics of Better Venture. And you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation already the origin of it, a little bit like your thesis as well, this initial gap that you identified while sitting at the Impact Hub in San Francisco. So, how do you guys are and stay better in your investment choices? Can you tell us a bit more this secret sauce that you guys put in place, and maybe you can tell us about what you also to offer, what do you offer to the founders that you support and invest in?
Yeah. We like to think of ourselves as the OGs of impact. We've been doing this since 2011, and now a lot of new firms have jumped into this space, which is great. I welcome it. But in terms of, truly mission-driven founders want to work with truly mission-driven investors, and that is absolutely what we are. We care deeply about the impact. We of course care about making money and making our LPs happy, but we don't invest in anything unless we don't invest in anything that it's not going to be impactful. That is a key part of our criteria. We use the UN Sustainable Development Goals as our impact framework. So every company we invest in has to map back to at least one of the UN SDGs. The impact has to be intrinsic to the business model and to the product. So each unit you sell is going to create more impact. It has to be measurable, quantifiable. We look for mission intentionality among the founders because that matters a lot to us. And we also think it's a big driver of success. And, we work with them to help. One piece of the value proposition for us is we help our founders leverage their mission as a competitive asset. How do we talk, if we can measure our impact better, then we can talk about it in our job descriptions. We can talk about it in our marketing and sales materials. We help walk them through the B Corp certification process if they want to go that route. We're a B Corp. We really believe in what B Corp stands for. And the market signaling that it enables, we just so we're really embracing of the mission and the impact, and we also know a thing or two about the areas that we invest in. We're a generalist fund investing in a number of different categories, but within the firm, we specialize. I specialize in food and ag and synthetic biology. Rick specializes in electrification and the personalization of health. Lindsay specializes in the future of work and education. So we can really build. So we've been able to build, practices within the firm in those areas. And we take a really hands-on approach with our founders. We're investing. We write high conviction early checks at the pre-seed and seed stage. We love early. We love being able to make an impact. We help them de-risk some of their key areas of risk in the early days. And then we help them, think strategically about who they want to hire, who they need to add to the team. And then we really go to bat for them when they're ready to raise their next round of capital. And we've got a Rolodex of, 400 or 500 co-investors that we've worked with over the last 11 years and can reach out and make lots of introductions when they're ready to raise that next round of capital.
That sounds fantastic. One thing that you mentioned, or at least we can find in many places in your website, is also you touch. You mentioned this in terms of equality, in terms of race, genders. It's something that minority founders are also welcome to you in your fund. And interestingly, when you present the fund, you also mentioned that you're in Oakland, California, in the Bay Area or in Silicon Valley, as other funds, and even though you're in the same area. Is that something that is really important for Better Venture to be able to support this kind of minority? And what do you see as a challenge for founders coming out of those sector of the society, I would say?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is very much a big criteria for us and for the portfolios that we're building. We look for gender balance, so companies that are 50% of which are backed by female founders. And then on the race and ethnicity side, we are looking for at least 10% that are founded by Black founders, and then at least 10% that are founded by Latinx founders. So those are goals we set for going back to Fund 3, and we've been able to actually exceed those goals for Fund 3, which were really. It takes a ton of work, and we want to continue to get even better. We want to approach the U.S. population for those race and ethnic groups. We fundamentally believe it's a moral imperative to do this, to get more representation within venture capital, within technology companies and venture-backed companies. But we also see it as an opportunity for economic outperformance. I think that good founders, great founders, and good deals can come from anywhere. And I think we like people who think different and who have had different life experiences. We think that that's a source of outperformance, and so that is part of the equation as well.
I hear the sound in your background.
That is the ice cream guy coming by.
Fantastic. Take one
speaking of Oakland, I mean, that's actually quite representative of Oakland. I mean, it's Oakland is the second most diverse city in the country after New York City, and we're in uptown Oakland on 25th Street, and Rick and I have been proud Oakland residents for me for 16 years, him for 20 or 25 years. And we love being based here, and we do see a lot of good deal flow coming through from our networks here in Oakland of a much more diverse group of founders here.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area in the Bay, definitely, and very close to Berkeley, where you went to as well. So
that's right. Yep, just down the street. Mm-hmm.
All right, so a couple of more questions before we wrap up this first part of the interview. We already covered a lot of the different investments that you guys have been doing in the past or are currently doing, but I like to, that's always a question that we ask, is like to understand a bit more, like what are the most, promising for you today in terms of impact cash return, sectors, like meaning like you build impactful companies while creating highly profitable business. Do you see like any underdogs area that are underlooked right now that people are not looking at that we should look at and that you are very excited about? Maybe one or two examples that you have.
Sure. I mean, I think, in general, we're going to see, lots of exciting opportunities in climate technologies. And I think there's probably, we think about kind of 4 different categories within, kind of what we call electrification. I mean, there's kind of climate broadly speaking and like the decarbonization of industry, but within climate more specifically, especially as it relates to electrification, you've got mobility, the built environment, industrial applications, and grid modernization, and there are definitely some underdogs in those categories. I think especially in industry, industrial applications. I think that's kind of a slightly overlooked area where we're starting to see more, like you've got these old school ways of making things, of distributing things, and now we're seeing emerging technologies like 3D printing, for example, and additive manufacturing and advanced manufacturing. I think those are really interesting areas that I think we're going to see more of in the coming years. And then related to that, in our third theme of sort of democratizing access to prosperity, I think there's a big opportunity that's a bit overlooked, which is around how do we retool the workforce as these emerging technologies reshape industry and disrupt industry. It's really going to change the profile of the kind of workers who have the right skill sets for the future of those industries. And so, with more production now and manufacturing happening back on shore because of COVID and also geopolitical risk, I think there's going to be big and exciting opportunities, along the lines of kind of upskilling and reskilling, and that's kind of like a coda to our investing in climate, is that we care about the people that are being impacted from an industrial perspective and a work perspective, and we want to make investments to better position them for the future of work, or like upskill, reskill them, or support them in the launch of their own independent careers. So that's an area we're thinking a lot about.
So at the contrario, as I was mentioning at the beginning, like we always like to hear like things that according to you makes absolutely zero sense. People should stop pouring money into it, or like waste time on trying to build things there. Do you have like one or two examples of like things that you absolutely don't believe in terms of like real potential for business and impact at the same time?
Yeah, we like founders who think different and who have a view of the world that is, maybe a little radical, a little out there. I think the more conventional the thinking of a founder is, the more likely you're going to end up in a business that isn't that radical and is in a competitive area. And so I just think that there's a lot in a lot of different categories. Like, I mean, plant-based food is an example. Like, the bar for us is really high in plant-based foods, and if you're differentiating yourselves based on branding, based on based on packaging, like, that's not going to gain any traction with us. The reason we did meaty is because there's a real scientific innovation with the strain of mycelium that they selected, with how they're leveraging and harnessing mycelium to scale up. And yes, they have branding and packaging, and you have to have that in order to succeed in that market. But fundamentally, the differentiation is based on a novel scientific innovation. And there's a lot of Me Too companies and plant-based products right now that there's just a lot of noise, in that market. I don't mean to single out that one particular market, but that is one that comes to mind, where there's just a lot of competition. And so in general, we like to kind of shy away from areas that have lots of competition. Fintech is another one. We've generally not done a lot in fintech. I mean, we do have a couple of investments. We're looking at one right now as well, kind of in climate finance. But to really move the needle and to rise above the rest, you've got to have something that's novel and radical and different. And there's got to be a source of a competitive moat. And that's what we always ask for with every entrepreneur we meet, is like, what's the key innovation here? What's going to make you guys different? And enable you guys to scale.
So what's next for Better Venture?
So we launched Fund 4 earlier this year, and so we're in the market. We're putting money to work. We've made a couple of investments already in Fund 4. It's a really challenging market out there, but it's also, I think when I look at the market from the perspective of investments we've already made, I have some worry, just because it's just a tough market, and there's the risk of downstream financing has gone up. But from the standpoint of putting new money to work, it almost couldn't be better. I mean, yes, you have the backdrop of being in a recession, but we all know the mantra that some of the best companies have been built during recessions. The valuations have come back down to earth, and they're back to a more reasonable level. Last year was just completely unreasonable and ridiculous, but you kind of have to go where the prices are going. Otherwise, you're just gonna have to stay out of the market. But we're pretty excited, pretty bullish about the next, putting this money to work over the next 3 years or so, especially as it relates to climate technologies. We're in this transition, $11 trillion investment opportunity. We're seeing lots of great opportunities there, and we're excited to put money to work there.
So what's your personal view on the climate crisis? I mean, as I was asked, are we doomed? What would you say to people who feel demoralized and see all of the consequences as of today?
I'm not a climate scientist, but I am a venture capitalist, and I'm an optimist. And so, I think you could put me in the camp of people who are optimistic that we will, figure a way out of this. I mean, humans have a lot of ingenuity, and we respond. We have a tendency of responding to crises with lots of innovative thinking. And I'm pleased that the U.S. has finally kind of gotten back on board with doing something. I do think that we still have some work to do in certain political spheres of this country to just recognize that climate is a crisis and that humans caused it. But we need to move on from there. But I'm optimistic that. Just the fact that the cost of clean and renewable energy has now gone below the cost of fossil fuels gives me reason for optimism. That we're at a place now where we're below cost parity on renewable sources, and therefore we have the levers that we can pull to be successful and make a dent. So will there be pain along the way? for sure. I mean, we just saw it last week. We saw it, a month or two ago in Pakistan, and I live in, a fire-prone area, and in the hills of Oakland, and I think about it a lot. And so, I think there's going to be more pain to come, but I think we will figure a way out of this crisis.
So how can the community of investors, experts, founders listening to the show can help you?
Just, if you're a founder, or someone in academia, or, someone that's developing, technical skill sets, I think just follow that inner voice that you're hearing to not, go down the traditional path of working in any old business, but, put those skills and passions to work to solve these big problems. Because I think that's what we need. We need capital. We need great, smart, motivated, passionate people to come together and build innovations to solve these big problems. And if you're an early stage company building an innovative technology that's going to create a lot of impact, we want to talk to you.
Any question I should have asked you I didn't for this first part of the show?
No, I think you did a good job covering all the bases, I think.
Thank you.
Helpful.
Thank you so much, Wes. Thank you so much for your time, your incredible insights, and sharing, so much passion and energy that you do for a better world. So thank you so much. Very, very inspiring.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Hi, it's Guillaume again. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. As I said, do not hesitate to share an episode with a friend. Also, if you value the work we do for the climate tech ecosystem, here is how you can contribute to it. Today, I'm asking for your support and a donation or sponsorship to make the work of our self-funded team more viable. Even a small contribution means a lot to us. In any case, I will invite you to subscribe to our channels and visit our website startupbasecamp.org to discover more episodes like this one, and get your membership to access all our members' exclusive content. So remember, all of this is possible because of your support and donation. And we want you to be part of this collective movement against climate change. Let's keep in touch, and I hope you will enjoy our next show with us.